Hey, good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing today? I hope everyone is well. Can somebody just do me a favor? Just let me know that you can actually hear me and you can see my mouse going around on the screen, because I'm going to feel really silly if I'm sitting here and I'm just talking to myself for the next hour. Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for that. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, 1st of August. It's 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. in the UK. I've just got to go through a little legal bit before we actually get started, and that is to say that this webinar is for information and education only. Nothing said, not said, or implied is a solicitation to buy, sell, trade, or not trade in any vehicle whatsoever. And I am also not a registered financial advisor. Right, I'd also add just something from my own point of view, which is just to say, please be aware we do have non-farm payrolls on Friday, and it is notoriously a volatile time of the month, particularly in gold and silver. And I guess there are a number of people here who are interested in the gold and silver markets. We'll have a look at those a little bit later. Right, thanks very much for taking the time to join me. I don't want to go on for too long, so what I'm going to do is briefly introduce myself, then we're going to go and look at a few charts. Gold, silver, somebody asked me to look at Tesla, ES, all sorts of things. And what I'm going to try and do is show how the methodology that I use can make them readable and accessible to just about anyone. And then finally, just going to talk briefly about my new website, which is up and running. I've got a couple of questions coming in. If you don't mind, what I'm going to do, folks, is leave those to the end, because anyone that's been to my webinars before knows it's a little bit like a monkey riding a bicycle. I've got to concentrate on one thing at the same time. Okay. Philip, I've just seen you pop up something. Can you just remind me at the end, and I'll try and do that. Yeah. Great. That is the last. I'm looking at the questions until a little bit later. Right, a few words about me. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ben Drage, and as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm British. I live in the UK, and a little bit about my background. I read law at Oxford University, started work in 1982 in the city, and started off there in the money markets. And I was there from 82 until 98, working in various boutique firms, which were looking at what was then the nascent interest rate swap market. 98, I decided to leave in order to concentrate on my own personal trading, and that's pretty much what I've been doing since then. Right, great, that's out of the way. Let's have a look at some charts and see what I mean when I talk about trying to decode the markets. First thing, and the most important thing to me, is clear and uncluttered charts, and I hope that is what you see in front of you at the moment. I don't use MACD, RSI, Bollies, and certainly no Elliott Wave, which I think is one step down from chicken entrails, I have to say. What I do is I look at price, pure and simple price. And the reason for that is because what price is doing gives us supports and resistances. The chart you're looking at, Japanese yen on a weekly basis, and I guess that it makes sense to most people. You've been looking at it for long enough, so I guess it should do. You can see where the support is down here. You can see support across here as well. You can see where resistance is up here. Okay, and maybe also some of you noticing resistance across here as well. In short, it's the kind of chart which if you had in front of you, you could trade it with conviction. I'm going to show you the same thing without a pitchfork, and just see how that looks to you. I mean, it's not quite easy. You know down here this is support. You know up here this is resistance because you've just seen it. Yeah, support, resistance. Question is, if you're looking that blank, would you actually notice it? Well, most people are going to chart it like this. They're going to come up here, they're going to draw a line across like that and say, okay, we've got resistance there. That's great. They're also going to say, across here, look, we've got support. That's a horizontal. Not bad. We can just fit that a little bit like that. Okay, something like that. You've got a triangle. It doesn't really help. By using pitchforks, and all pitchforks do are they try and put the price into context, the movement of price into context. I go down to a low here, an A, come up to a high, a B, come down to a low again, a C, and all of a sudden I think it starts to make sense again. All of a sudden you can start seeing why these slightly higher lows that we've got across here, why they were actually finding support. What's the reason? Why they moved up? When it moved up, why did this stop out where it was? Well, it wasn't because it was in a line from here through here, and maybe that just kind of worked. You might have got that. But looking at this in terms of a pitchfork, from this point onwards, when you saw this move up here, the first place that you're going to start looking for in terms of resistance is up here at this line. Okay. Moving on from that, a little bit more detail. If you remember, we had another line across it going from these highs. Let me just show you, going a little bit tighter for you. These resistances here, okay, resistance, we fell away from it, resistance again, moved up through it. When we came back down, we were looking at this line to see if we found support. And that's what we found 3 times. We've been looking at this since this line since April, May. We've come back down to it now. Let me just take this chart. I'm going to actually move this exact same chart onto a daily time frame, and you can see what we're looking at in a little bit more detail if I do that. Here we go. This is the same chart. You can see we've got the same A, B, C. You can see all the support we had down here at the lower parallel, the way this moved up really nicely. You can see how precise that touch was up there. And then we start moving to the downside again. And just maybe you're noticing some of these other lines. They're just a little bit more subtlety that we're putting into price, that we're trying to follow, that we're trying to watch and see what happens. What I was talking about, this line across here, little bit of resistance across there. We come back down to it. We expect to find a bit of support there. Lo and behold, up we do. Move up again. Come down, support exactly in the same line once more. I guess the people that were looking for horizontal support, where were they found that? A little bit surprised, didn't come down to that. Up we go again. Again, we're running into areas where we've got previous lines of support and resistance. You know, what worked once is going to work again. Also, we came back down once more. Again, what have you got? People looking for horizontal support. Not going to be too happy. They're going to be a bit surprised that we find support at this level, 110, 00, that round number, that kind of level. That is what we're currently looking at the moment. One other thing you might be picking up from here is that we've got lowering resistance. We've got resistance up here, then it comes down here, then it comes down here, and then it comes down here. Now, price needs a certain amount of room in which to vibrate in. Okay, so you press down on resistance, it tends to suffer in terms of support. So at the moment, we are looking to see if Japanese yen breaks through this 110 level and starts to move once more to the downside. Let me just get rid of that horizontal there. We're not just looking at it like this. I'll just very quickly show we've got a fork moving to the other way here, and we've been watching this for quite some time. Don't worry too much about if price goes up above the upper parallel or not. I'm not somebody that worries too much about that. Anyway, look, I guess that shows you very, very briefly the kind of thing that we're looking at, because the holy grail of trading is to find support and resistance. Likely areas of support and resistance. When you've done that, you can trade with confidence, and that's why we look at charts. Charts give us patterns, and our brains are actually wired to respond to patterns. You know, we're pattern-seeking mammals. When we see a pattern like this running, everything is fairly regular. You know, we can trade that with a little bit of confidence. We can anticipate that we're going to find support here at this 110 level. You know, let me just get rid of it once more. Would you be so confident there? Not so sure. Not so sure. Again, you know, we just look at it with the fork in place. It gives us that much more confidence. As I say, our brains are wired to respond to patterns. So when we see a pattern in the chart, we feel comfortable with it again. I'm going to do this same trick one more time. What I'm going to do is go and have a look at a pair that I've been following recently. Euro yen up here. Euro yen, 60-minute euro yen. There we go. I've taken all the markings off the chart except for a little circle here, just so I don't lose myself. Otherwise, it really would be back to that monkey cycling on the bicycle. Again, what have we got? Classic technique will tell you the thing to do is to start looking for supports and resistances. I mean, I guess most people would probably draw a line across there. That isn't too bad at all. You can see there's something happening up here in terms of resistance as well. You know, that gives you a nice channel. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. You know, you haven't hit it all the time. You haven't missed it all the time. But what you're doing is describing the channel. All we're doing by taking a pitchfork, and let me just do that as I try and talk, 2 things at once. This is should be quite miraculous. All we're doing with the pitchfork is we're trying to frame the movement in price. Okay, and there we go. ABC like that. As you can see, it does absolutely nothing. But what I'm going to do is change the type of pitchfork that we're using. Okay, that's one type. That's the other type, and it's this second type here that I'm paying attention to, that is what I like at the moment. Let me just get rid of these lines here. All I'm going to do is just add a little line of support across there, and as you can see, we've fitted the price into this fork very, very nicely. So you can see where support kicks in. It kicks in here, then kicks in a little bit lower, but we get a strong move up, median line. That's our resistance. When price comes back down again, we're going to anticipate it comes down to this line once more. As it does, moves up a little bit, finds support here. Previously we found support along this line. It moves up again. We're looking at resistance in the same line of the fork, and again here price moves back down again. First place we're looking for support is again along this lower parallel here. So all we're doing is we're putting a framework on price. We're just looking to see how we can actually describe the support and the resistance a little bit better than just looking at it in terms of a bear chart. Hang on just one sec, I need to grab a sip of water. Okay, sorry guys, back with you. Right, let's move on from that. Somebody has, I said I wasn't going to look at that screen, but somebody just popped up and said, what did you do today? Well, quite a lot of things, but one of them was I actually looked at this chart. This is Aussie against Canadian, 60-minute chart again. Just running through this very quickly. I'll try to remember what I did. We've been looking at price moving in a down fork here. You can see we've been defining the resistance along this upper parallel here. As price moves to the upside, what we start doing is we start looking for something which is moving to the upside, something which can define the price as it moves higher. And again, we just go from a low to a high to a low again, and that just begins to put us into some kind of shape, some kind of pattern we can start to look at. Is this going to work? Absolutely no idea. In fact, what I think I had previously was I used this low there, and I was just looking at that and thinking, did this kind of work? And it just sort of fell out the bottom. So what I do, I spend a lot of time during the day just moving these forks around, just looking for patterns that work and that kind of trigger responses in me. First thing to see is here, as price moved up from this line, we moved up to median line, we fell away back down to it. We fell down to close to the lower parallel. So, again, start watching that. As price moves back up again, we pretty much get to the median line once more. Comes down, where do we expect to find support? Let me just move a bit tighter so you can see it. This green sliding parallel, failing that, the median line. What happens is price came down to the median line, and this would have been a really, really good place to get into this vehicle. Say you got in at the green line. I'm seeing that at about 88.43 or so. What you would probably do is you probably put your stop, because I always advocate trading with a stop, never without. You'd probably put it under there. So you've got 88.44. Oh, sorry, what am I talking about? 99.44. Might as well get the right big figure on this. You could either put your stop down there at about 30 points beneath it. If that was a little bit too rich for you, maybe you could go underneath there. That would have been quite nice. 99.23. You've got about 20 point stop there on a 60-minute chart, and you're looking to see how price moves. And lo and behold, lower parallel here, sliding parallel there, up it does go. What you would probably be doing at this stage, once it starts moving to the upside, is you probably move your stop up to get yourself in the money, so that what you're doing is playing with the market's money rather than your own, and just look to see how price moves. And what are you going to do? First thing you're going to look at is the quartile across here. Can you see a little bit of support and resistance along this line? Yeah, you'd look to if you can get above here, 10009. That's very close to a round number, 10000. Very important to get above that, I think. Be a good idea maybe just to move the stop up just a little bit further, just to keep yourself well in the money. 100, you can guarantee a lot of people are going to be around that level, and we want to be sure that if price hits that, reverses to the downside, we're at least well in the money. If we move above this line, if we get above here, we're starting to look to the upside. First place I'd be looking for resistance would be a line along that high, again in the angle of the fork. I'd be looking up here at about 10060. If we move through that, I'd be looking at the median line at about 10080. That is just en passant, just very briefly, what I might have been doing today or might not have been doing. I don't actually tell people my trades. Okay, I'm purely an analysis service. I don't actually give trading advice or trading signals. All right. Let me move on. I was going to go and have a look at Tesla because somebody asked me to go and have a look at that as it has been running quite nicely. Again, all I've done, just taken this is a weekly chart of Tesla. I've just taken the annotations off it. Again, probably what you're going to do as an analyst is you're going to go across there, something like that. Horizontal line, quite nice. Draw another one down there, quite nice. It's all sort of tracking pretty well. We had a big move to the upside there, so what are we going to do? We're going to put another line at the top there. Okay, but let me just draw a fork for you in a minute, and what I want to try and show for you is why we stopped out there. Okay, why we found a bit of support here, and even here, just this little high in the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, why we found a bit of resistance. Okay, so before your very eyes, as they say in all good magic tricks, I'm going to go from an A to a B up here to a C down here, and all of a sudden, hopefully, it starts to make a little bit of sense to you. What we've got is Tesla here. It's been running very, very nicely. You can see that here, once we found the lower parallel of the fork here, price moved up. It moved to the median line. You can see it found a bit of resistance at this area, backed off a little bit, pretty much to the quartile that we've got across here. Quartile resistance, bit of support. As we move higher, we move above the median line of the fork. We find support along it, a couple of good lines of support there. Prior resistance turns to support, and we keep pushing to the upside. We move all the way up to the upper parallel of the fork. And I remember I put this into StockTwits, I think it was, and also onto Twitter, and just showed this fork, and people were screaming at me and saying, no, it's going to 500 next week, etc., etc. 386, 385, 386. We fell all the way from there down to the median line, pretty much precisely down to 300. 85 buck fall to the downside. What we've seen since then is actually a little pickup in support. And I've got to say that when I was looking at the weekly chart, when I was looking at the daily chart, what I just did was I just looked I had a few more lines that I ran through, and I just ran it off as I remember it. That high there, strong bar to the downside there, resistance there. There you go, a little bit of support. We pushed up. Where did we move through from 303 up to the quartile and then back down? You remember the quartile was support and resistance here. That's just a logical place to look. So what you've actually got in terms of Tesla at the moment is you've got a bit of a wedge. You've got price moving up from the lower parallel, finding support there, finding support here, and a couple of times along the median line. You've also got resistance here, potentially just lowering a little bit there. So what am I going to watch at the moment? What am I going to say? Tesla's going to go to come down to here? Is it going to move up to here? Quite frankly, I really don't know. And all I do is I'm going to put the charts here and going to say, if we find continued resistance along this quartile, price is going to continue to move to the downside. If we then lose support at the median line, we're going to continue to move to the downside. And again, as a lot of people say, using these support and resistance lines, they are the very, very, very best opportunity of you being able to say, this is what's happening, this is why it is happening. If anybody actually turns around to you and say, Tesla's going to go down to 200 now, walk away. If anyone says Tesla is now going to go to 500, walk away. The only sure way is to trust yourself and to just be looking at lines like this and just be saying, okay, I'm bullish as long as we stay up above 304. We dip beneath 304. We start finding resistance along this line that was previous support. That means we're going to the downside. Okay, let me just take all these off for you and just say, look, the level I talked about, 304. Let's put a horizontal up there. Let's try and find 304. That's there. Okay, yeah, I guess on a horizontally, you could say if we start falling underneath this line, I'm going to start getting a bit negative. But why would you put it there? Why not put it there? Why not put it across that high there? That works quite nicely. So not 304. My line is 285, 287. Well, mine isn't. 304, 305. That is the line that I'm looking at. We go underneath that, I start getting bearish. I hope that is helpful. Look, all I'm really trying to point out is that whether you're actually a newbie, whether you're a seasoned professional, just remember that when you actually can see the pattern in this chart, and then you can then understand what is happening. You can understand here why we've got resistance at this level, 387 or so, why we've got resistance at this level, 346. You can also understand why we're looking for 304, 305 to be support. when you understand that, when you see the pattern, when you can see what is happening, you can trade with much more confidence. And just remember another thing, the way that I look at things, the supports and the resistances that we actually use, 95% of other traders do not see them. And therefore, they can give us a huge edge on what other people are looking at. If we're looking at this line in terms of bullishness as an upsloping line, if somebody else is looking in terms of a horizontal, we've got the advantage on them. Right. Now let's go and have a look at some other ones. A number of people just said, can we go and have a look at gold and silver? I guess that is what quite a lot of people want to do. We do, by the way, just so that you know, I run a couple of services. One looks at just about everything, including gold and silver, and another one just specifically looks at gold, silver, platinum, the miners, etc., etc. Right, here we go. Another chart, another line. This is gold on a weekly basis, and I guess this is something that most people will have seen before. We've got a trend line coming from the all-time high back in 2011 through all these resistances here. Okay, and we are currently beginning to try and move above that. Okay, people are beginning to get excited, talking about the new bull market in gold, how it's going to go to, I don't know, X thousand bucks or so. Great, it may do. I'm not just looking at this line. I think there are more resistances that we have to get above. The fact that we moved above this one single line, these 2 points, 1, 2 across there, the fact that we saw the Trump dump from there, okay, that's the Trump dump week, has been resistance. We started pushing a little bit above it. Even if you take a line just off that little high that we saw above it and run it through there, I'm still not particularly happy with us being through all resistance at the moment. Let me just show you another chart. And again, this is one that you might have seen on Twitter. I've posted it a few times. Again, we've got the trend line, the green trend line. Okay, that is the one that we are beginning to push above. We've got a couple of other things. The easiest one to look at is this line across here, 1308. That is a line of horizontal support. As you can see here, support. It's also a line of resistance, and it has worked a number of times going back all the way back to 2010, 2011. That is a line that I think we have to get above, 1308. The other one is this rather prettily coloured AB equals CD formation. Let me just show you that on its own. There you go. And what we're looking at here is an impulse leg, AB, okay, and we look at the next low, next big low, CD, and we say the AB leg is equal to the CD leg. And a lot of people, what a lot of people do, whether it's off the back of Fibonacci's or whatever, look at halfway along the CD leg. That's a level that we call the P level, and that I'm seeing at about 1291 or so. A couple of times gold has come up, we've hit that, we've fallen away, we've hit that, we've fallen away, we're coming up, we're approaching it again. I'm looking in the area sort of 1292 up to about 1297, something like that, just to see if we do find any kind of reaction to that. Just going back to the weekly gold chart again, here you can see we're just running into this area of resistance. There's that 1290, 1292 sort of area on the red bar. We've also got this horizontal across here. We do still have some more work to go through. I've said before, I'm not really going to start feeling that we're out of these areas of resistance till we get above 310, 320, that sort of level. But there is an awful lot of room to the upside that we do have in both gold and silver. Let's go and have a look at something else. Let's go and have a look at the daily chart, and here this is a down chart that we've been looking at. I want to show it for a couple of reasons, because I want to sort of look at this low here, the 1205 low that we got to in early July, and the way that we've moved up strongly from that. This is a down fork. I always have my down forks in red, my up forks in blue, just because I'm like that. This is one that we've been using for quite some time. I'm not going to go through all the details of it, but just a couple of things to note. One is the upper parallel resistance that we found late last year. December, we found a bottom absolutely bang on that low there, as you can see, since when we've been moving up, and moving up in a little bit of a strange kind of way. We'd also been looking at this green sliding parallel across here. It worked very well for us back here just before the Trump dump and all that kind of stuff. Worked back here as well. A little bit messy, I've got to say, back here, but when price started moving down again, I was just looking at this line and warning people just to be careful to see if we find that all this resistance that we found across here turns to support again. Okay, we use this kind of level, this 12.16 sort of level that we were looking at, 12.19, 12.16, that sort of level. We use that with another fork, and let me just show you that here. I'm not going to show absolutely all of it because I do have to keep a few secrets for my members. But look, just believe me sufficiently to say that, look, we've been looking at resistance along here. You can see the lines are working. You can see the line of support across here. We dipped beneath that line of support. Where did we move to? We moved to the lower parallel of the fork. I'm going to go in a little bit tighter on this. You can see we had one day that we moved slightly below the fork. The line there is at 1207.2. The low on that bar is 1204. So we moved under by $3. Since when we have moved strongly to the upside. Okay, we used a combination of that red fork that I previously showed you, and then this fork here to get a little bit of a move to the upside. What are we currently looking at in gold? Well, I've shown you all those resistances. I've shown you this daily support. There's obviously been quite a move up since early July. You know, it's been pretty much one direction up until where we are at the moment, 1280. Let me take it down a little bit. Let's go and have a look at what we've been following on the 60-minute chart. Whoops, and that should not be there. Let me just get... Oh, actually, no, that's all right. We'll leave this here. This is what we've been watching as a 60-minute trading chart since this low, around about in the early part of July. Okay. Slightly different fork. We've got a false A here. Instead of being the absolute low, we just run it back to here. But the reason we do that is because we are looking to see how price runs nicely in the fork. And what I want to show you, what I want to point out here is the way that we ran up immediately and hit the upper parallel, fell back a little bit from that. I'm not going to go through all the details, but I guess most people can see that the various lines that we draw across here do have an effect, particularly if you look at this outer quartile here, okay, all that resistance across there. Unlike some people, you know, the moment we move outside a fork, I don't discard it, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to describe the path of price, the way that price is moving, whether it moves above the fork or whether it's within the body of the fork, it doesn't matter to me as long as we are moving, you know, along the lines defined by the fork. Anyway, that's by the way. We found our resistance here at the outer quartile. This was the anticipated resistance, or this was resistance that we found. When we came up again, we anticipated it, and again anticipated it. From there we fell. Again, without going into too much detail, we turned a bit of support along here at the upper parallel into resistance there. We started falling to the downside. The precise place that we found support was the bottom of the fork. I mean, without this, I don't think anybody would have had a clue that that was where we were going to go to. I assume that most people would have probably drawn horizontal off that being the next place, and we're looking for price to move down to there. We were primed looking for price at 1243, 1244, this sort of level, and that's what we got. And price very rapidly moved from there to the upside, topping out for the time being at the upper parallel of the fork here. So you had to move from 1244 up to 1263, basically $20, with virtually no risk at all. And that worked very, very nicely. Since then, what's happened? Let's just take things forward a little bit, show you how we've been, what we've been looking at. Price again didn't quite get up to this quartile, so we were a little bit wary. Slightly lower highs. Instead of being up here at the quartile, we could only get up as high as the upper parallel of the fork here. If we'd maintained strength in the fork, we would have run up to this level, 1268 at the quartile. Instead, it was slightly weaker, so we moved back to the downside. What we did note, what we did find, was that we were beginning to pick up a little bit of support a little bit higher. By that, I mean is that here, price didn't have to come down to the lower parallel to find support as it did back here. Okay, so what we're doing is we're playing a game of higher lows, lower highs, but we're doing it instead of horizontally, we're doing it in the angle of the fork, right? So just looking at what we're seeing, we also used other forks, which again I don't have the chance really to go through. We started moving to the upside from here. Again, found our support. We moved up to resistance along here at the upper parallel. Then we had a gap. We gapped up and we gapped higher. We gapped above this quartile here. We gapped up to the next resistance, which would be the warning line. That was the next line we were looking at. Price came back down. Again, I'm not going to go through all the details. When we had a little bit of a dip, where do we dip to? Just above the median line, and then bang, up a little bit higher. Somebody has just flashed me, Martin, who's one of the guys, just said, have a quick look at natural gas. I will do that a little bit later. Thanks. Let me just take you down This is 20-minute chart. Again, gold, seeing what we have here. Again, look, we're just simple A, B, C. We're looking to define the move that we've got. This is what we found this afternoon. Price started dipping. We had the gap up. You remember I showed you on the 60. Price started lowering highs, sliding parallel across here. We're a bit lower, down to the median line. That's where the resistance was. We started dropping away from it. Where did we drop to? The green sliding parallel here. Again, we got a spike bounce off that. I don't know if anybody traded that. I would have told them off if they had, because there's literally one bar there. But look, that's where the support was. The support was at the sliding parallel, previous support. We moved up. Where have we moved to? The median line once more. Currently looking to see if we can get above this median line. This is our current high. This is all the way along this line. And if we move to the downside, we come up again and hit it tomorrow or later in the week, later tonight even. 1283 is the level that I'm looking. Currently it's 1281. Okay, that is the resistance that we need to get above. That's a very quick look through gold. Let me just briefly, because I'm going on quite a lot at the moment, let me go and have a quick look at silver as well. I'm going to start off and show you something here. This is silver on a weekly. Again, I'm just not going to show you the whole chart, because again I want to protect the members a little bit. But you remember when we came to the lows that we found in gold, okay? That was where we found the low. I'm discounting the spike that went down to 14, because basically COMEX have thrown that out. But look, a couple of lines are important here. We're looking at a sliding parallel. Again, we're beneath the lower parallel of the fork. But look, just copying the angle of the fork all the way along. That's all we do. From this low that we found back in 2015, that's where we found our low, virtually to the pip. From that, we started moving to the upside in silver on a daily basis. Now, the next line we're looking at is this lower parallel. We want to see if we can get above it, if we can start finding support there and start pushing to the upside. The reason that we use this line is because we saw what was happening with gold. We saw gold coming to a likely place for support. We also saw silver coming to a likely place for support. And having found that, price did start pushing to the upside and away from that. I'm just going to cut out a few things I wanted to look at. One thing I do want to do is just go down and have a look at what we're seeing in silver. This is on the 60-minute chart here. Again, the game that I'm playing, you can draw in your resistances quite nicely sort of across there. You can draw in your supports across there quite nicely. Let me just put the fork in very briefly, and I think it just gives an almighty amount more information than just drawing highs and lows. So we're going to go up to a high there, going to go to a low there. Again, that probably worked until we got to this point, at which point, didn't really work. So all we're going to do is we're going to change it to a different kind of fork. This worked quite nicely, but again, not really showing as much as we want. I'm going to change it once more to what's called an unmodified shift. And as you can see, or I hope you can see, this has really been working very, very, very nicely indeed. You've got constant resistance from here on the 18th at about 1630. You can see it's on the 24th at 1660. You can see it's on the 27th at 1680. And now we're going to look to see if we can find price moving up to this sort of level again, early part of August, just above 17. In order to maintain the action in the fork, in order to maintain hitting the same line of resistance, we're not looking at horizontals, we're looking at this upper parallel here, and that's the sort of level that we're going to look at. In terms of the support that we're seeing, a couple of areas have been of interest. One was the median line initially. You can see support there, moved up, support there again, moved up. Then we came down a little bit. We came down to the quartile, and you can see the support along there. And what happened earlier today, price dipped very strongly. As you can see, where did it dip to? Basically the quartile. That is the next place that you would expect support. We've moved up again. We're beginning to recover the upper parallel, the median line of the fork here. Looking to see now if we can stay above that 1676. If we can, do we have the strength to push up to this upper parallel resistance once more? Right. Now, Colin just said, go and have a look at natural gas. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put you on hold one more sec. I'm going to have a slurp of water, and then we'll go and have a quick look at natural gas. Okay, guys, back with you. Right, let's go and have a look at natural gas. We've been following this recently. Where have we got natural gas? 240, he said. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? Okay, just bear with me one tick while I do this. Let's just give this a little bit of perspective. I'm doing this off the cuff, by the way. This is natural gas on a daily chart. This is what we've been looking at. We've been watching price move to the upside. We've got a blue pitchfork we've been following from this A down here. Let me just pop that there just to prove to you that it does come from there. There you go. Modified shift. We were watching resistance in the line of the blue fork here. Price has moved down. It moved down to the lower parallel. For a few days we've been watching it in terms of this red fork as well. The red fork comes from this A up here again. Let me just show you where that comes from. There you go. We've been watching these resistances. Just looking at the blue fork here, you can see we dipped down, I think it was yesterday, underneath the fork. We've been warning about that for a little while. Reason being because of the lowering resistance from up here near the median line. Okay, we're underneath the quartile now. We're moving down, the red fork beginning to come into its own. And I've just got the red fork on its own here. You can see how that has been working. You can see the resistances, you can see the support. And we've just been working our way to the downside. On a 240-minute chart, I think I posted this into the chat room earlier today and just told people to have a quick look at it. No guarantee really that this was going to work. Just kind of quite like the look of it. I think that, I mean, you know, you start off with a fork looking at it in terms of this. That to me is a little bit too steep. That, okay, maybe. I just quite like the look of this. And again, I don't know if you noticed this, Colin, just running that across there. Sliding parallel from that low. We caught that low very, very nicely in this, and price moved to the upside. Great. Okay. That hopefully just shows how we go with sort of price actually working in action, or also that is what we're trying to do during the course of the day. Right. Look, that's a very quick spin through what I hope are some interesting charts. And I guess for some of you who are more used to the kind of lagging indicators like RSI, MACD and that kind of thing, might have been a bit of an eye-opener in how we can actually project forward to find likely areas of support and resistance. That really is what I try and do, what Forex Analytics is all about. I am desperate to provide clear and uncluttered charts. And what that can also give, when you can see things clearly, is it can give high probability, low risk entries and exits. As I said before, you know, once you put a pattern on the chart, you understand the chart, and in turn, you can successfully trade the chart. I'm effectively taking the blinkers off and just saying, look, this is what's happening. These are simple lines. Anybody can understand them. And again, as I said earlier, because we're seeing and putting lines of support and resistance where other people don't see them, we have a huge advantage, and you know, everyone needs that kind of edge. I'm going to come to questions in just a sec, but let me just finish off it by saying, if you like what you've seen today, you want to find out more, please go and check out the website, www.forex-analytics.com. I will send out an email after this webinar, which will have a copy of the recording of it. You can maybe go through it a little bit at your own pace if you want to, or if you have any questions, you can always just get in touch with me. I mentioned earlier we had a couple of services. One is metals, which looks at precious metals alone, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, looks at some of the miners. We also look at we also just keep an eye on what's going on in other currencies, like I know gold in Canadian dollars had been doing really nicely recently. We keep an eye on that. That's one service. That's the metals service. The other service, markets, includes metals, but also covers things like ES. Oh shoot, I said I was going to have a look at ES. Covers ES, covers Forex, all sorts of things, basically a bit of everything. I do video analysis every morning. That, because I'm based in the UK, that's out London time, so it's always available for US subscribers, US members when they're up. There are a couple of chat rooms where we can post charts and so forth during the course of the days, and also webinars twice a week, a bit like this. And let me just say, look, at the moment we've got a special offer in for new members. You can get 1 month's access to the full service for $50. And if you like what you see, and I hope that you do, then maybe you'll stay for a little bit longer than that. But if you decide it isn't for you, and you let me know within the first 2 weeks, I will refund that $50 in full. That is guaranteed. Okay. Let me just pop over. I wanted to have a quick look at ES. I said I would do that. Where are we? ES. Doobie. Yeah, I was going to look at. Let me just do this very, very briefly. I'll try and run through ES. Hang on one sec. Just clear that. There you go. Okay, ES, we've been watching price moving to the upside, hitting all these new highs horizontally time and time again. Let's just, what you can see from here, I hope, after what I've been seeing, is a change in support and resistance here. We were starting to look at resistance along this green sliding parallel, this line. It worked very, very nicely. We were getting support along the lower parallel of the fork here. Okay, all of a sudden we slip underneath that lower parallel, the support here starts to become resistance, and we kind of start moving a little bit sideways. Yeah. Also, you can see lines that we keep drawing still in the line of the blue fork. We just keep falling underneath them. Okay, we're moving sideways. There you go. This is again 60 minutes. We're moving a bit sideways. That's put in front of you. What do you look at? How do you analyze it? Well, I guess you got a bit of a move to the upside there. You might want to put in. You might maybe draw another line from these lows. If I can draw a line even at this stage. There you go. Cross there. Actually, maybe just change that. That works a little bit nicer. You got a little bit of a wedge working across there. Again, it's moving quite nicely to the upside. Let me just show you something else. Because we were falling out of the blue fork, because we were beginning to look a little bit to the downside, because things were going a little bit sideways, what I did a couple of days ago, I think it was a couple of days ago, just put in fork like that. Okay, just drew that in. Again, going from a high to a low to a high again. I did this. We noticed this spike all the way down, touched. I mean, it's within a buck, I think, 24. Where's the low on that? The low is at 24.57. The line is at 24.56 and a half. 50 cents out. Okay, very, very close to that. What's happened since then? We moved up. We've hit resistance at the upper parallel. We're just looking to see how that goes. Notice also the median line of the fork. You've got a couple of nice little bits of support along here as well. Okay, just a little idea of the kind of thing we do. What have I got there? ES60. Again, let me just draw this on here. You can see the falling out of the fork, of the blue fork that we have. Let me just put in that red fork, then A, B, C, there you go, turn it red. Okay, and that is the pattern that we're looking at. And I can guarantee 95, 98% of people who are looking at the ES have not seen that. Okay, we kind of knew that we were going to get a bit of resistance. As price moved up, we kind of knew that this was the level that we were going to get a bit of resistance. I expect most people were probably looking, can we get above that horizontal? As soon as we move above that horizontal, I'm going to buy the what out of it. We didn't get there. We found upper parallel resistance. We've fallen away from it. Okay. Again, sorry, I meant to show that a little bit earlier on. Let me just finish what I was saying. I was talking about the special offer we have on membership. Try it out. If you don't like it after a couple of weeks, your money comes back to you. Absolutely no problem at all from me. I hope I've given you some idea of what it is that I look to do and how I try and simplify charts, and also try and put the moves that we see into an understandable, and when it is understandable, that means it's a tradable context. I think the methodology has great benefits for traders, for investors, whether you're a newbie, whether you're experienced, but I do appreciate that for many of you, it's a little bit of a step out of the mainstream. So let me just close by saying I really like the quote that says, if you want to have a better performance than the crowd, then you have to do things differently from the crowd. Great. That is really all I wanted to say. I'm going to have another slurp of water and I'm going to come back and answer some of your questions. Just bear with me a tick. Okay, right, back with you again. Right, Anil said, I tweeted that I'd look at yen 60. Can I please do that? Yeah, sure, Anil. We looked at yen, the weekly, we looked at it quite a bit. There you go. Japanese yen 60-minute chart. I think I tweeted this. Let me just show you again what we've got. Quite a narrow little fork here from this high. We've been just been watching price moving to the downside. Again, what I was saying, I think this shows just one thing, that I don't actually mind if price moves out of the line of the fork. As you can see here, I guess a lot of people have given up about here, back here on the 20th, 2 weeks ago. Since we've actually been watching it, we've been watching what happens. We've been watching the lines that seem to work, that seem to run. We moved up a little bit higher. We've kind of got this quartile, this outer quartile, that was resistance back here. It's a bit of support here. It's support here, and we've almost come down to touch it, yet we haven't quite. there's a bit of a gap to support. That tells me maybe things might try to turn a little bit higher as a result of that. If, on the other hand, price just dips absolutely down here, goes to 109.70 or so, then this support continues in the line of the fork. We're still watching the same trend, the same channel that we're working. We've also got this green sliding parallel up here just from that high there. You notice it's caught these couple of lower highs. We did push a little bit above it here. We pushed not quite so high here, bang on the line there, bang on the line there. What that tells me is that the resistance is beginning to press down a little bit on price. So previously price was able to get above this line of resistance, okay, got quite a bit above it. Then it came up again. It didn't get so high above it. Let me just move the arrow out and show you that I'm telling the truth. Didn't get quite so high above it, fell back down. The next time, couldn't get above the line. Down we go again. And once more, again here, it hit that and it fell to the downside. What I think is quite important is to look at prices across time frames. You know, this is the 60-minute chart. We're looking to see how price moves, support and resistance there. If we go back and have a look, just remember where we are here, 110.20 or so. We've got a low on the day of what is that, 109. Sorry, that's the wrong bar. There you go, 109.91. Let me just go across and have a look at what we were looking at in terms of the daily, the yen daily. Here you go, here's yen daily. Again, look, we're anticipating quite a line of support here. It's worked on a couple of occasions. We've kind of hit that once. We've got a little bit of a bounce on it. You have to try and meld the two charts together. The 60-minute that was telling us about this strong move that we've had to the downside. The daily that is telling us, look, this is a level that we might find support. We start slipping underneath this line. And we start finding resistance along that, then that tells us we're moving further to the downside. You know, no line that we draw is inviolate. Every line has a support side and a resistance side, and if it provides support, then all well and good. You might see a bit of a move to the upside. If we move through it and it starts to become resistance, then you're going to see price moving to the downside again. I hope that that's not being too sort of obtuse, or that's not being kind of too you know, Eastern mysticism or anything like that. But you know, it is what you see it. Okay, that previous line is looking at about 110, that sort of level. We're going to keep watching this 60 minutes to give us idea of how we are going to be moving, of how we're going to be moving higher and lower. And just in between those, obviously, you know, we've got 240-minute. Let's just see how we're doing on that one. Yeah, this is still a down fork, and I guess this is slightly weird as well. We've been kind of stepping up in this down fork. You can see resistance along this line here. We move above it. We find a bit of support. Let me just get that a bit bigger. There you go. Resistance there becomes support. We move up. Resistance here becomes support. We move up. Again, you can see the way it's been running. Resistance, we move up, becomes support, and then we start stepping down. Support becomes resistance. We move down. And this is what we're watching. We're currently looking between this line here, 110.56 to the upside, resistance. We're going to keep watching here, 109.90, look in terms of support. Again, just trying to show very, very briefly how that all kind of comes together a little bit. Does that help? Yep, that's okay. That's a long look at JPY60. Andrew says, I posted rupees a while back, and also gold in rupees. Yep. Sure, Andrew. Let's go and have a look at rupees. I think that's running very, very nicely on the daily chart, actually. Here you go. This is Indian rupee against US dollar. I guess what you're talking about is the median line that I pointed out, the resistance across there, and the way price fell away from that. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just, you know, running very, very nicely indeed. Indian rupees, A, B, C. We start to pick up resistance in the line of the fork. You can see this happens. You can see support there, gap through it. Then we've got the median line, runs really nicely. Resistance there. We fall underneath it. We come up and test it a couple of occasions, and we start to fall away again. This level up here is at about 64, around about 65, 64.95, that sort of level. We're down at about 64.07 at the moment. So quite a move. You said gold in Indian rupees. That's euro. Maybe I'll just talk about that again in a minute. This is the chart I think I was showing you. Gold in Indian rupees on a daily basis. Yeah. Okay. very quickly, we've got two forks here. We've got a blue fork going from this low here. Let me just prove that to you, that it does actually work. Oh, I can't get hold of any of these. Hang on a sec. Never work with animals, children, or charting machinery. Hang on a sec. Let's go back to the default. There you go. Right. Okay, I've shown it. We come from that A there. Okay. All I'm going to do is just. Sorry. I'm really screwing up here. Okay, forget about the blue. No, I'm not going to forget about the blue. I'm going to move it back. Sorry about this, guys. Properties. There you go. Right. The blue fork. Drew that in. We saw a little bit of support and resistance along this line. Not one particularly wonderful, but we came back. We came down. We found a support here. Anticipated support at the lower parallel. It dipped very, very slightly underneath it. Started pushing once more to the upside from there. We saw that. What I then did was just because of the way price had moved down from these highs, started drawing in this red fork just to see how things were going with that. And what worked very, very nicely indeed was this as a modified shift. But then if we make it an unmodified, again, it comes from this A up here, you can see we catch the resistances, a little bit of a move above it there. We've caught these resistances quite nicely. All I'm going to do, I think, is just draw a line in the line of the red fork from that high and keep a little bit of a watch on that. At the moment, a bit like gold we talked about in US dollars, gold in Indian rupees moving nicely and strongly to the upside, running into a bit of resistance, or I would look to see if we've run into a bit of resistance here. That's up at about 82,465, that kind of level. Let's call it 82.5, something like that. Look for a bit of resistance there. If we do start moving to the downside, look to see in terms of the blue fork whether we find support along this line across here, about 79,400. Down here at the lower parallel, about 78,300 or so. Does that help? Yeah. Can you show that euro? The one I just showed, was it? Oh, here we go. Euro gold. No, that's silver. Sorry, euro gold on a weekly. There you go. Again, this has just been running very nicely. Something that there are a number of European subscribers, as you can imagine, if they have to buy physical or whatever in euros, they obviously want to be watching this this chart here. We've got a couple of forks. The main one that we're looking at is the blue fork, coming from this A down here. We moved all the way up, hit the upper parallel very, very precisely, fell back down again. You can see we've got a little bit of support here across the quartile there. We moved to the downside. I was anticipating that the price would probably come down to the lower parallel here at about 1047. It actually went to 1057, just a little bit above that. Couple of reasons maybe for that. We've also got this red fork coming to the downside, as you can see. Caught very, very nice resistance there. Price fell. You've got the median line here. You've got the median line, which saw a huge bounce off that from Brexit back in June 2016, a year ago. Moved up there. This was the high that we found, again, at the upper parallel. We've fallen strongly there. Median line, nice bounce there. That's where we bounced again once more, pretty precisely. All we did from that was say, okay, this is where we're anticipating the bounce. Just came back. I admit to drawing this green line after the event, after the bounce, after we saw it. And all we've done is just come back here to a nice big strong bar there and just drew that line across there. And that catches that low very, very nicely, I think, as well. Is that all right? Yeah, sure. Martin, you've asked me Singapore dollars. Yeah, I don't look at them quite as much as some of the others. Indian rupees we've already looked at. Singapore dollars. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, this is the weekly chart going back to 2007, as you can see. Not absolutely perfect lower parallel support. I admit that. You know, you can't get me on that one. I admit it, Gov. Quite nice resistance though up here, as you can see in the line of the fork, and we've come down fairly rapidly, really, through the early part of 2017 down to these lows. Currently looking to see if we do pick up any sort of support. You can see we had a move up from here. We didn't know that was support previously. When it came down, this was an obvious place to look for support and for lows. We did find it here once before, moved up again, hit resistance at the same level, down we come again, and looking to see now if we pick up a bit of support pretty much at this sort of level. I mean, we did spike beneath it just a little bit, we're going to keep a watch and see what happens along this line. If you look at what's going on in the daily chart, the daily chart is to the downside, just showing all those resistances that we have. If you want to turn Singapore dollar around, what you've got to do first of all is get above this line. That is a line of support that has become a line of resistance. I'm seeing that at 136.05. You get above that, you start finding support on that, you start moving to the upside. Until you move above this in terms of the daily, then you're going to continue to move to the downside. And I mean that even if we move down through September and you come up and sort of test it, somewhere over here, 135 or so, and still fall away from it, and a trend is a trend until it changes. And at the moment, the trend is to the downside. The first way you're going to change this trend is to get above this line here. Okay. And what I mean by get above is not just, poke above it, but actually get above it and start to find support along here or higher. Okay. You always see a change of trend on a lower time frame before a larger one. It's an obvious thing to say, but a lot of people don't think that. So, if there is a change of trend, if Singapore dollar is going to move to the upside, you're going to see it here on the daily before you see the bounce on the weekly. Okay. What the weekly does is it tells us that there is a possibility of finding support here. By taking it down to the daily, you can find out, or you can probably watch that happening. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. KC. You want to look at Apple on the weekly? Yep, sure. Mark, I see what you've written there. The answer is no. You know what's happening with that thing, so I'm not going to look at it. Apple on the weekly. Actually, I had this. Let me just check on this. Hang on a sec. Yeah, there you go. I thought I did this. I was actually doing this for somebody mentoring a little bit earlier on. They were looking at it. Again, there we go. The empty chart. Nice and easy to draw. Most people would, as I've said before, draw a line across there. They'd probably also draw a line across there, and that wouldn't help. So instead, what we're going to do, just take the pitchfork, as we have done time and again, as you've seen, A, B, C, like that. Is that working? Does that look nice? How about if we move it like that? Yeah. Does that help at all? This Apple Weekly, that's just showing what we do. Let me go back to the one that I've actually marked up here. Really looking at two or three things here. One is the support that we get along the green side in parallel here starts to take us to the upside. You can see resistance we've got at this level. That's where we'd anticipate resistance. We get a really, really strong bar up and through that. You often find that it takes a very, very strong bar to get through one of these lines, and the bigger a bar is, the more notice you take of it in terms of support and resistance. We move up again, we start to come into a line of resistance across here. It kind of got a bit choppy, a bit messy. We did move above this line, we turned the resistance into support, pretty much hit the upper parallel, fell back down. Where have we got to now? Continued support along here. What are we going to look at? Well, I'm going to look to see if we do find continued support. Okay, there. I'm also aware of the fact that we have got potentially resistance up here, potentially lower resistance there. We don't know if that is lower resistance yet. Again, what I'd probably do is just draw a line off that and keep a watch. If price, say, moves up here, touches that line and rejects strongly away from that, then I would start saying that we're getting lowered resistance, that we're starting to look at Apple moving to the downside. And as I said earlier, you start finding resistance moving to the downside. That puts pressure on your support. And as that happens, pressure on support can tend to mean that things move to the downside once more. Great. Look, I've got one more. Guys, I think what I'm going to do is go and do this. Barty says sterling against Australian. I'm assuming you want to look at... Yeah, I should. That's right. I think I showed this again as a tweet earlier. Can I just talk about this one again? Yeah, no problem. Again, sterling has been under an awful lot of pressure recently, as I'm sure you're aware. Again, all we try and do is just make sense of the lines that we have. I mean, a lot of people would probably have been looking at these highs back here. This is a daily chart, by the way. Just been looking at these highs back here and saying, we haven't reached that. It's all negative. Price continues to fall to the downside, yada, 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 etc., etc. again, all we do is we start drawing lines, we start drawing forks, we start seeing what's going on. We notice, for example, that you've got resistance. Again, let me just get rid of the fork a second. You've kind of got a line. Can you see how those guys are in the line there? You kind of see if there's anything you can do with that. Once you get an A, B, C pattern, you kind of go, let's look and see what we have. We've got A here, we've got a B up there, we've got a C there. Doesn't work like that. Maybe it works as a modified shift like that. Oh, but hang on, look, we've got this problem underneath. Price has moved underneath. Everything else looks good. Let's just add a line underneath, see how it works, and look, we're picking up support there and there, and up we go. Again, this is something we've been looking at in the past few days, the past few weeks. I have a tremendous number of charts, as you can well imagine. So there you go. Is that all right, Barty? Yep. Okay. Oh, Philip, sorry, I said I'd look at Platinum, didn't I? This is absolutely the last thing I'm going to look at. Okay, absolutely nothing more off that. Just noticing that natural gas still running quite nicely to the upside on the 240. Good stuff. Platinum, I haven't looked at since this morning, I don't think. Okay, Platinum, we have been looking at in terms of these trend lines to the downside. They've run for a long time, very, very nicely indeed. You can see this trend line here. The circles are where I actually draw my lines off. Okay, so it's worked quite nicely. You can see here, it's found support quite nicely. Down here, support again. So, we know there's something happening in this line. What we started to do from there is started to look and see if there was anything inside these big puce lines that we could start to find. We found a line of support across here. That is not horizontal. That is horizontal. That line is not horizontal, as I hope I've just proved. So we had that little line of support. We were watching that. We were also, let me just get rid of that line. We were also just looking to see what happened in terms of the trend. And in very much the same way as we talk about support moving up and moving down in terms of the fork, it does the same here. We were having support along this line, this trend line here. Now all of a sudden we start seeing support moving along this trend line. It's higher. Price didn't have to come all the way down to this trend line to find its support. It found it an awful lot higher. As I said previously, when support starts to press down on resistance, when resistance starts to press down on support, you tend to lose your resistance. Likewise, when support pushes up, because price needs a certain amount of room to vibrate in, you start to lose your resistance. Again, we just drew this little line here, the second green line there, resistance there. Came up to it, we moved above it, we found support there again, just one bar, very, very subtle, and that was enough to take us up and above this puce line and into, well, it's not exactly blue sky, but in terms of the trend line, we're now at the highest point since the trend started back here last year. You probably noticed I had a little bit of a fork on here, just drew it to see if there was anything much going on. I think I just drew something like that. Just a little ABC, just to see if there's anything happening. I mean, it's really too early to say anything yet. I haven't actually looked at the weekly today. Let's just see how we go there. Oh no, sorry, that's palladium. There you go, weekly. Okay, big blue fork here. This was almost done as a joke for somebody. Okay, so don't necessarily trust it too much. It goes back to 1998 here, and I was just looking to see if there was anything going on because we were having a bit of a competition about who could draw the biggest fork. Having said that, having done that, there is a little bit of sense to it. You've got a red fork to the downside. We're beginning to see price stepping up a little bit in terms of the red fork. Let me just show you the median line of the fork, the red fork here. You can see we found support there. Move a little bit higher. We're pushing up in terms of support. Again, we were just beginning to push up a little bit higher. So you start seeing that, you start trying to draw something to the upside. Again, what I did here, I say it was just for a bit of fun. I just took an ABC and started to look and see if there was anything much happening. That's really all I can show you in terms of there being anything happening in the line of the blue fork. A little bit of resistance across there as well. We did also come and look at this lower parallel. Okay, I'm not quite sure how to say how much. I'm Not quite sure how much to say this is tongue-in-cheek and how much it isn't. Look, let's put it this way. If we move up above this lower parallel, which is 953 or so, if we start moving up above that, start to find support along here, I would look to see if that support does continue. Okay, I would not rely entirely on this. I would look at other shorter time frames as well, but it is just something maybe to keep in the back of your mind, so that 953 or so, we get above that, we start to find support along there, we start moving a bit higher, then potentially we could be you could start to look at this fork as maybe something worth watching. Let me just move that line down onto that low and see if we come back down again, just to find out if this fork is working. If we move to the downside, I'd be looking at about 903 and see if we pick up support there. But I have to say, Philip, I don't know how experienced you are in these things. Do not trust this on its own. Okay, it is kind of highly experimental and could just blow up in your face. I hope it doesn't, though. Okay, look, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this has been useful. If you do have any questions at all, I will try and answer them. You can email me, support@Forex-Analytics.com. Please have a look at the website. If what I've said has sort of piqued any interest with you, please think about joining, even if it is just for a couple of weeks, and finding out that what we do doesn't quite suit you. As I say, if you decide after that first couple of weeks it's not for you, full money back guarantee. Great, I'm going to leave you with that. I hope it has been helpful. Thank you very much indeed.